At the edge of town lies the entrance to the Whispering Woods, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the supernatural. The path winds its way into the heart of the forest, disappearing into the dense mist that clings to the trees like a shroud. Deep within the woods, a group of friends has set up camp for the night, seeking adventure in the unknown depths of the forest. A small campfire crackles and hisses, casting flickering shadows that seem to dance in time with the whispers that echo through the trees. In a moonlit clearing, the dense canopy of trees creates an oppressive atmosphere, suffocating the sounds of the night. Moss-covered ground crunches beneath the feet of the campers as they venture deeper into the heart of the woods, a sense of foreboding settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Suddenly, the group stumbles upon an old abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. Its windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges, swinging ominously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. Inside the cabin, the main room is a scene of decay and neglect. Decaying furniture sits shrouded in cobwebs, and dust hangs thick in the air like a tangible presence. The only sound is the creaking of floorboards beneath their feet and the distant whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. In the bedroom, a tattered mattress lies abandoned amidst peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. Moonlight filters weakly through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the walls like living things. Descending into the basement, the air grows thick with the scent of decay and mold. Rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. The sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. In the attic, cobwebs cling like shrouds to forgotten relics of a bygone era. Dusty trunks sit amidst a clutter of long-forgotten possessions, their secrets buried beneath layers of neglect. Moonlight filters through a broken skylight, casting an ethereal glow upon the abandoned treasures that lie hidden in the shadows. Venturing deeper into the heart of the woods, the trees close in around them like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching up towards the sky like gnarled fingers. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. As dawn breaks, the first light of morning filters through the trees, casting a golden glow over the clearing. The campfire smolders, its flames reduced to embers, and the forest is bathed in an eerie silence that seems to linger long after the night has passed. As the sun sets, casting a crimson glow over the horizon, an imposing mansion stands silent and forsaken. Its once grand facade now weathered and covered in ivy, the mansion casts eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn, hinting at the secrets it holds within. In the neglected garden surrounding the mansion, tangled bushes and wilted flowers paint a haunting picture. Moonlight filters through the twisted branches of the trees, casting an ethereal glow upon patches of the eerie landscape, where shadows seem to dance in silent reverie. On the grand front porch of the mansion, once a beacon of opulence, now lies cracked and crumbling under the weight of time. Moonlight casts long shadows across the faded steps, adding to the sense of abandonment that permeates the air. Within the mansion's foyer, the dim light of dusty chandeliers flickers weakly, casting eerie shadows upon the tattered wallpaper. Moonlight filters through broken windows, illuminating cobweb-covered furniture that sits frozen in time, a silent witness to the mansion's descent into decay. In the cavernous ballroom of the mansion, the once glamorous dance floor now rots beneath neglect. Faded tapestries hang from the walls like forgotten memories, while moonlight streams through cracked skylights, casting ghostly patterns upon the abandoned space, as if the echoes of bygone celebrations still linger in the air. Within the mansion's library, the scent of dust hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the musty aroma of aging books. Tattered armchairs sit among shelves of ancient tomes, while moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of forgotten knowledge. In the dilapidated dining hall of the mansion, a long table lies buried beneath layers of cobwebs and neglect. Overturned chairs litter the floor, while moonlight streams through broken windows, casting an ethereal glow upon the decaying scene, where echoes of feasts long past still resonate in the silent air. Within the mansion's study, dusty bookshelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge, while forgotten artifacts gather dust in every corner. Moonlight filters weakly through dusty windows, casting long shadows upon the stacks of papers and abandoned furniture that clutter the room, where the ghosts of scholarly pursuits still linger in the darkness. In a desolate bedroom of the mansion, the once grand bed frame now sags under the weight of time, its faded curtains hanging limply from rusted rods. Moonlight filters weakly through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling walls, where whispers of dreams long forgotten still echo in the silent night. As dawn breaks over this mansion's overgrown backyard, the soft light of morning bathes the decaying structures in an ethereal glow. Mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the forgotten corners of the estate in a veil of mystery, where the spirits of the past find solace in the dawn of a new day.
Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way. The abandoned Ravenswood Asylum stood on a hill, shrouded in fog and mystery. Jessica, a paranormal investigator, arrived at dusk, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. She parked her car and gazed at the looming building, its windows dark and empty like soulless eyes. Jessica pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the asylum was dark and cold. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with peeling paint and graffiti, and the floor was littered with debris. Her footsteps echoed eerily as she ventured deeper. As Jessica explored the main hallway, she felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a nurse standing at the end of the corridor. The nurse's face was pale and expressionless, and she slowly raised a finger to her lips as if to shush Jessica. Then she vanished into thin air. Jessica entered a room that appeared to have been a common area. Old, broken furniture was scattered around, and the walls were covered with faded, eerie drawings. As she examined the drawings, she heard faint whispers. She turned to see shadowy figures moving along the walls, their eyes glowing faintly. In the corner of the room, Jessica found an old journal. She opened it and read about the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients, mysterious deaths, and cover-ups. The journal mentioned a hidden basement where the worst atrocities occurred. Determined, Jessica set out to find it. Jessica found a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a staircase that descended into darkness. She took a deep breath and started down the steps. The basement was cold and damp, with rusty equipment and old stained medical tools scattered around. The air was thick with the smell of decay. In the basement, Jessica saw the spirits of the patients. They were trapped, reliving their torment. A particularly sorrowful spirit, a young woman named Alice, revealed that the asylum's director had performed cruel experiments on them. The spirits begged Jessica to help them find peace. Jessica found a hidden chamber where the director's spirit lingered, still obsessed with his experiments. She confronted him, demanding he release the tortured souls. The director's spirit raged, but the power of the trapped souls combined with Jessica's determination forced him to vanish into the ether. With the director's spirit gone, the asylum began to crumble. Jessica hurried out, watching from a safe distance as the building collapsed. The spirits were finally free, and a sense of peace settled over the area. As the sun rose, the fog lifted, revealing a bright new day. Ravenwood Manor had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. On a cold, misty evening, Alex, a young journalist with a thirst for the unknown, arrived at the manor. The gates were rusty and covered in ivy, and as Alex pushed them open, they creaked ominously. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark windows staring back like lifeless eyes. Alex pushed open the heavy wooden door, which groaned in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Dust-covered chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay draped in white sheets. His footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he ventured deeper inside. As Alex explored the mansion, he felt a sudden chill. Turning around, he saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving his heart racing. Determined to find answers, he made his way to the library, hoping to uncover the mansion's dark past. In the library, Alex found rows of dusty old books. As he searched through them, he heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Ravenwood. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Alex's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Alex reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Alex discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls, and old, dusty books scattered on a table. He found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Ravenwood. As Alex read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Ravenwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Alex and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Alex knew he had to leave immediately. Alex bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Alex reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article, revealing the dark history of Ravenwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Lord Ravenwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Alex knew the haunting was far from over.
On a foggy autumn evening, four friends, Lucy, Tom, Ava, and Ben, stand before Greystone Manor, an abandoned mansion known for its haunted past. Ben, always the thrill-seeker, dares the group to spend the night inside. With a mix of nervousness and excitement, they agree, pushing open the creaky iron gate and stepping onto the overgrown path leading to the mansion. The front door groans loudly as they push it open, revealing a dark, musty foyer. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and a thick layer of dust covers everything. The air smells of mold and decay. They switch on their flashlights, casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper as they step inside, the door slamming shut behind them. They decide to explore and find themselves in a grand library, filled with old leather-bound books. A large, dusty chandelier hangs from the ceiling, and an ancient fireplace sits cold and empty. Lucy notices a book lying open on a table, its pages filled with strange symbols. As she touches it, the chandelier above them begins to sway. A sudden cold breeze blows through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. In the darkness, they hear faint whispers and the soft sound of footsteps. Panic sets in as they fumble to turn their flashlights back on, only to see a shadowy figure disappear into the next room. They follow the figure into the kitchen where old rusted appliances and broken dishes litter the floor. The air is colder here and the feeling of being watched intensifies. Ava opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. In the hallway, they find a door leading to the basement. Ben suggests going down, but Lucy hesitates. The others convince her, and they slowly descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and the air is damp and chilly. They feel an overwhelming sense of dread. In the basement, they find an old wooden table with strange markings. A low growl resonates through the room, and they see glowing red eyes staring at them from the far corner. Panic-stricken, they scramble back up the stairs as the growling grows louder. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally bursting out into the cold night air. The mansion falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse into the grass, gasping for breath. The mansion looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night air is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety. Back at their homes, the friends try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the ghostly eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memories of that night remain vivid, and they realize that some horrors can never be forgotten. The whispering woods loomed ominously under the fading light of dusk. Trees stood tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like clawed hands. A thick mist settled among the trees, obscuring the path ahead and adding to the sense of foreboding. Deep within the woods, an abandoned cabin stood desolate. Its windows were boarded up, and its door hung off its hinges. Weathered wood and creeping vines adorned the exterior. Inside, darkness and mustiness filled the air, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling like ghostly veils. The living room of the cabin was sparse, with a dilapidated sofa and a dusty rug covering the floor. A broken window let in a chilling breeze, causing the faded photographs on the walls to flutter ominously. The kitchen was in disarray, with broken cabinets and scattered utensils. The sink was stained, and a thick layer of grime covered the countertops. A single flickering bulb cast long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The backyard of the cabin was overgrown with weeds, and old rusted gardening tools lay abandoned among the tangled foliage. A gnarled tree stood in the center, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers against the moonlit sky, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The whispering woods at midnight were cloaked in darkness. The trees seemed to sway and whisper secrets to each other, their branches creaking in the stillness of the night. Strange, ghostly lights flickered among the shadows, adding to the sense of otherworldly dread. The bedroom was cold and drafty, with a creaky bed covered in moth-eaten sheets. Moonlight filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up window, casting eerie patterns on the floor and illuminating the room in a ghostly glow. The attic was filled with dusty, forgotten belongings. Old trunks sat in the corners, their contents long forgotten. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay, as if the very walls were whispering tales of the past. As dawn broke, the whispering woods were bathed in the soft light of morning. The mist began to dissipate, revealing the twisted trees and tangled underbrush. Birds chirped in the distance, bringing a sense of calm to the once eerie forest, as if the night's terrors had never existed.
On a dark, windy night, 4 friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again.
Ravenwood Manor, a looming Gothic structure, dominates the landscape with its ominous presence. The setting sun bathes its darkened facade in a blood-red glow, as if warning all who dare approach of the secrets it holds within. The entrance to Ravenwood Manor is marked by ornate iron gates, their twisted designs speaking of a forgotten era. Vines snake their way around the cold metal, as if nature itself is reclaiming the estate from the hands of man. Within the sprawling grounds of Ravenwood Manor, darkness reigns supreme. Overgrown hedges and wilted flowers lend an air of neglect to the once grand estate. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows upon the unkempt landscape. In the backyard of Ravenwood Manor, twisted paths wind their way through a maze of gnarled trees. At the center stands an ancient well, its stone walls covered in moss and mystery, beckoning those brave enough to uncover its secrets. Adjacent to Ravenwood Manor lies an overgrown cemetery, its weathered tombstones peeking through the tangled undergrowth like silent sentinels of the past. Wisps of fog cling to the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the forgotten burial ground. Within the entrance hall of Ravenwood Manor, flickering candlelight casts long shadows upon the grand staircase. Tattered portraits line the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow every move of those who dare to enter. In the dining room of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for an abandoned feast, its once luxurious settings now covered in dust and cobwebs. The chandelier above hangs low, its light obscured by the thick layer of neglect that pervades the room. Within the library of Ravenwood Manor, dusty shelves stretch as far as the eye can see, laden with forgotten tomes and ancient manuscripts. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet that bears the weight of centuries of knowledge. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, the once grand canopy bed now sags under the weight of time, its tattered curtains billowing in the wind like ghosts of the past. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper, as if the very walls themselves are haunted by the memories of those who once slept within. As dawn breaks, the front steps of Ravenwood Manor are bathed in the soft light of.
On a cold, moonlit night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again.
In the heart of the dense forest, an abandoned cottage stands in solemn silence. Its windows are shattered, and the roof sags under the weight of time. Vines creep up the decaying walls, enveloping the cottage in a sinister embrace. As dusk descends, an eerie mist blankets the surroundings, setting the stage for dark secrets to unfold. Within the dilapidated cottage, the living room is a haunting scene of neglect. Broken furniture lies scattered amidst cobwebs that cling to every corner. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, revealing glimpses of a forgotten past. The air is heavy with a musty odor, as if time itself has stagnated within these walls. A single flickering candle struggles to illuminate the darkness, casting long shadows that seem to dance with unseen entities. In the neglected kitchen, chaos reigns supreme. Dirty dishes lie abandoned on the countertops, forgotten remnants of a life long gone. A thick layer of dust blankets every surface, undisturbed by human hands. The sink drips ominously, each drop echoing through the silence like a foreboding drumbeat. The only sound is the occasional creak of the floorboards, as if the very foundations of the cottage groan with the weight of its secrets. Within the gloom of the bedroom, tattered curtains sway in the whispering wind, casting eerie silhouettes upon the walls. An old creaky bed stands sentinel against one wall, its mattress sagging with the weight of forgotten dreams. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, illuminating the peeling wallpaper with an otherworldly glow. The air is heavy with a sense of unease, as if the very room itself holds its breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold. Outside in the neglected backyard, nature reclaims its territory with a vengeance. Weeds choke the once manicured lawn, obscuring the path to an old well that sits at its center. Its stone walls are weathered and crumbling, a silent testament to the passage of time. Shadows dance across the overgrown grass, their movements mysterious and unsettling. The oppressive silence is broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind, as if the very forest itself whispers secrets to those who dare to listen. In the dim light of the basement, rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. Cobwebs cling to the damp walls, weaving intricate patterns that seem to pulsate with a sinister energy. Strange symbols are etched into the stone floor, their meaning lost to time. The air is heavy with a sense of malevolence, as if the very walls themselves are alive with dark intent. With the arrival of dawn, a faint light washes over the decrepit front porch, casting long shadows that seem to stretch and twist with the shifting light. The wooden boards groan underfoot, protesting the weight of each step. The wind whispers through the cracks in the walls, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. The surrounding forest looms ominously, its dense canopy concealing secrets that refuse to be uncovered. Lucy and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian-style house they bought at a bargain price. The house is large and filled with antique furniture. As they unpack, Lucy finds a covered portrait in the attic. She pulls off the cloth, revealing a beautiful woman with haunting eyes. She decides to hang it in the living room. That night, Lucy wakes up to strange noises, soft whispers and the sound of footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. When she looks at the portrait, the eyes seem to follow her. She feels a chill but convinces herself it's just her imagination. The next day, Lucy hears whispers coming from the living room. She finds Mark staring at the portrait, mesmerized. When she touches his shoulder, he snaps out of it, claiming he heard the woman in the portrait whispering his name. Lucy starts to feel uneasy about the painting. Determined to understand the painting's origins, Lucy visits the local library. She discovers that the woman in the portrait is Isabella, a former owner of the house who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. It's rumored that her spirit haunts the house. That night, the whispers grow louder, and Lucy sees a shadowy figure moving through the house. The air grows cold, and the portrait seems to come alive, the woman's expression changing to one of anger. Lucy feels a strong, malevolent presence. Lucy and Mark contact a paranormal investigator. The investigator explains that Isabella's spirit is trapped and angry. He suggests they find something that belonged to Isabella and use it to perform a ritual to release her spirit. Lucy searches the attic and finds an old diary belonging to Isabella. The diary details her life and the love she lost. It also mentions a locket that she cherished. Lucy finds the locket hidden in a secret compartment in the attic. Lucy and Mark, guided by the paranormal investigator, perform the ritual using the locket. As they chant, the house shakes, and Isabella's ghostly figure appears. She looks sad, but grateful. She reaches out, touches the locket, and then fades away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Isabella's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Lucy and Mark decide to stay and cherish the history of the house. They hang the locket in a special place to remember Isabella. Months later, Lucy and Mark enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Isabella and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The house is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way.
Evelyn and her friends, Mark, Lisa, and John, stood at the edge of the dense forest, staring at the looming structure of Blackwood Mansion. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at their feet. The mansion, abandoned for decades, had an eerie aura that made them shiver despite the warm summer evening. "I can't believe we are actually doing this," Lisa muttered, her voice trembling. "It's just for one night," Mark reassured her, though he didn't sound convinced. "We spend the night, prove the ghost stories wrong, and then leave." John, the skeptic of the group, laughed. "Ghosts aren't real. You'll see." Evelyn, the leader of the group, took a deep breath and stepped forward, pushing open the creaking iron gate. "Let's go." Inside the mansion, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet as they explored the dimly lit corridors. Each room they entered seemed more decayed than the last, with peeling wallpaper and broken furniture strewn about. "Look at this," John called from one of the rooms. He held up an old photograph of a family, their faces blurred with age. "This must be the original owners." Evelyn shivered. "There's something unsettling about this place." Mark found an old journal on a dusty bookshelf. "Maybe this will tell us more about what happened here." As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered even though the mansion had no electricity. The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, though no one was there. Whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. Lisa clung to Mark. "Did you hear that?" "It's just the wind," John said, though his voice was unsteady. Evelyn held the journal tightly, her eyes scanning the pages. "There's something here. Something about a curse." A loud crash echoed from the hallway, and they all jumped. Mark grabbed a flashlight and led the way, finding a broken mirror on the floor, though no one had touched it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the pages of the journal. "It says here that the family who lived here dabbled in dark magic. They summoned something they couldn't control." Mark's eyes widened. "What did they summon?" "A spirit of vengeance," Evelyn whispered. "It's trapped here, and it feeds on fear." John scoffed, but his face was pale. "This is ridiculous. There are no such things as spirits." Lisa pointed to the mirror. "Then how do you explain that?" Before John could answer, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Their breath fogged in the air, and a low growl resonated from the shadows. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing red. The friends backed away, their fear palpable. The figure seemed to grow stronger, feeding on their terror. "Stay together!" Evelyn shouted, her voice breaking. John tried to act brave, stepping forward. "Leave us alone." The spirit lashed out, sending John crashing into a wall. Lisa screamed, and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. Evelyn held up the journal like a shield. "There's a way to banish it. We just have to find it." Evelyn frantically flipped through the journal, looking for the banishment ritual. We need to find the symbols and say the words. Mark and Lisa barricaded the door, trying to buy them time. The spirit pounded against it, its growls growing louder. Found it! Evelyn cried, showing the page to the others. Let's do this, Mark said, determination in his eyes. They quickly gathered the materials described in the journal, creating a circle of protection. Evelyn began to chant the words, her voice steady despite the fear. The spirit broke through the door just as Evelyn finished the chant. It roared in fury, but the circle of protection glowed, holding it at bay. Keep chanting, Evelyn yelled, her voice filled with authority. The spirit thrashed against the barrier, but it couldn't break through. Slowly, it began to weaken, its form dissolving into the air. With one final, deafening scream, the spirit vanished. The mansion fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. We did it, Mark said, his voice filled with relief. The friends stumbled out of the mansion, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They were exhausted, but relieved to be alive. Let's never do that again, Lisa said, managing a weak smile. Evelyn held up the journal, now closed. We should make sure no one else ever tries. John nodded. Agreed. This place should stay forgotten. They walked away, the mansion behind them now just a shadow against the rising sun.
The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment, she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching. Greystone Mansion had always been shrouded in mystery in the town of Pine Hill. On a cold, foggy evening, Sarah, an enthusiastic journalist, arrived to investigate the rumors of hauntings for her upcoming article. She parked her car near the gate, feeling a shiver of excitement mixed with dread. The mansion loomed large and foreboding in the mist. Sarah pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold, the air thick with dust. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decayed foyer. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she ventured deeper into the mansion, feeling a growing sense of unease. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. She turned and saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her questioning her sanity. Determined, she continued to the library, where she hoped to find records about the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of old, dusty books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Greystone. The entries spoke of dark rituals and a curse placed on the house. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular drew her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. She reached out, but the image disappeared. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books on a table. She found a journal detailing dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by its original owner, Lord Greystone. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Greystone appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Greystone Mansion. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Greystone's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." She knew the haunting was far from over.
Emma, a writer in her early 30s, moves into an old Victorian house in Willow Creek. She hopes the secluded house will help her overcome her writer's block. As she steps into the house, the air feels heavy, and she hears faint whispers echoing through the empty rooms. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house creaks and groans as if it's alive. She hears footsteps in the hallway, but when she checks, there's no one there. Her unease grows, but she convinces herself it's just the house settling. While exploring the attic, Emma finds an old diary belonging to a girl named Lily. The diary speaks of strange occurrences and a tragic story of how Lily disappeared without a trace. Emma feels a chill run down her spine as she reads the last unfinished entry. The following night, the whispers return, clearer and more urgent. Shadows flicker and move on their own. Emma sees a ghostly figure of a young girl in the hallway, who vanishes as soon as she approaches. Fear takes hold of her. Terrified, Emma reaches out to the town's historian, Mr. Thompson. He tells her about the legend of Lily, a girl who disappeared many years ago. The house has a history of hauntings, and no one has lived there for long. Emma realizes she must uncover the truth to find peace. Determined, Emma performs a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. As she calls out, the room grows cold, and the ghostly figure of Lily appears. Lily reveals she was murdered, and begs for Emma's help to find her remains and put her to rest. Following Lily's clues, Emma discovers a hidden cellar beneath the house. There she finds Lily's remains and a locket with her name. Emma feels a mix of horror and relief, knowing she can finally help Lily find peace. Emma arranges a proper burial for Lily. As she places the locket in Lily's grave, a sense of calm envelops the area. The whispers cease and the house feels lighter. Emma feels a deep sense of closure and knows she has done the right thing. With the haunting over, Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. The house no longer feels oppressive. Instead, it's filled with a comforting, serene atmosphere. Emma sits by the window looking out at the sunny landscape, ready to start a new chapter in her life. In a small town nestled among dense forests stood an old manor, its windows boarded up and its once grand facade now crumbling. The townsfolk whispered tales of the mansion being haunted, with eerie lights seen flickering in the windows at night. A group of adventurous teenagers led by Alex decided to spend the night in the abandoned manor, hoping to debunk the supernatural rumors surrounding it. They arrived just as dusk settled, their excitement tinged with nervousness. As they ventured inside, the air grew colder and the silence thicker. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they explored the dimly lit rooms, each filled with dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared fleetingly in the corners of their eyes. Alex remained determined to find a rational explanation, but doubt crept into their minds. As midnight approached, the supernatural presence in the manor grew stronger. The teenagers found themselves surrounded by swirling mists and ominous whispers, trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth where reality blurred with the paranormal. With their courage waning, the teenagers made a desperate attempt to escape the malevolent forces that held them captive. Racing through the maze-like corridors, they stumbled upon a hidden passage leading to freedom. As dawn broke, the teenagers emerged from the manor, shaken but alive. They vowed never to return to the cursed place, their encounter with the supernatural etched into their memories forever. In the outskirts of town lies an abandoned asylum, its once imposing structure now dilapidated and haunting. Four friends, Tom, Lisa, Ben, and Emily, arrive at the asylum, drawn by its eerie reputation. They stand before the decrepit building, its windows broken and its facade crumbling. Inside the asylum, the air is thick with dust and decay, and the walls are lined with peeling paint. The friends navigate the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Strange whispers seem to fill the air, sending shivers down their spines. As they explore further, they stumble upon an operating room, its equipment rusted and covered in cobwebs. The air is thick with the scent of antiseptic, and the faint sound of footsteps echoes through the room. The friends feel as though they are being watched, and a sense of dread washes over them. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The spirits float through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the ghosts draw closer, their presence filling the room with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the asylum, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the asylum, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. The moon hangs low in the sky, casting a soft glow over the abandoned building, a reminder of the darkness they have escaped.
Elmwood Manor stood alone, surrounded by tall dead trees. Its windows were dark, and the setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the overgrown lawn. The sky was a deep orange, adding to the sinister atmosphere. Inside the manor, the foyer was grand but neglected. Dust and cobwebs covered everything, including the old chandelier that hung from the ceiling. A grand staircase led to the upper floors, and debris littered the floor. The living room had a cold fireplace, a dusty rug, and furniture covered in white sheets. Broken windows let in faint light, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. The dining room featured a long table covered in a dusty cloth. Chairs were overturned, and cobwebs hung from the chandelier above. The windows were boarded up, making the room feel even more claustrophobic. The kitchen was cluttered with old rusty pots and broken cabinets. An old wooden table sat in the center, covered in dust and cobwebs, adding to the room's decrepit state. The library was filled with old dusty books and cobwebs. A large, ornate mirror hung on one wall, and a single candle flickered on a desk, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to move on their own. The bedroom featured a large canopy bed covered in dust. The cracked windows let in moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper. An old wardrobe stood open and empty, adding to the room's eerie stillness. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The atmosphere was oppressive and filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. A hidden room in the basement was filled with strange artifacts and old books. A large cracked mirror reflected a distorted image, and a single candle flickered on a desk, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift and move. As dawn broke, Elmwood Manor was bathed in soft, golden light. The shadows receded, but the mansion still looked eerie and abandoned. Birds began to sing, but the air remained heavy with the terror of the night. The haunting was over, but the memories lingered, a testament to the mansion's dark past.
In the quaint town of Oakwood, nestled among towering trees, a group of friends receives an unexpected invitation to Ravenwood Manor, a sprawling estate rumored to be haunted. Despite the warnings of locals, they eagerly accept the invitation, drawn by the promise of adventure and the thrill of exploring the unknown. With excitement and trepidation, they set out for the manor, their imaginations running wild with tales of ghosts and spirits. As the friends arrive at Ravenwood Manor, they are struck by its imposing presence, a looming silhouette against the backdrop of the night sky. The air is heavy with a sense of foreboding as they step out of their car and approach the grand entrance. The doors creak open, welcoming them into the darkness within. Inside Ravenwood Manor, the friends are greeted by the grandeur of the Grand Hall, a vast space filled with antique furniture, intricate tapestries, and flickering candlelight. But beneath the opulence lies an undeniable sense of decay, as if the very walls of the manor are steeped in secrets and shadows. As they explore, they can't shake the feeling that they are being watched. As night falls, the friends gather for a dinner party in the Grand Hall, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the walls. The atmosphere is tense as they exchange nervous glances, the weight of the manor's history hanging heavy in the air. But as the night wears on, strange occurrences begin to unfold. A chill wind blowing through the room, objects moving of their own accord, and whispered voices echoing through the halls. After dinner, the friends venture into the library, a dimly lit room filled with ancient books and dusty shelves. As they browse the shelves, they come across a book bound in faded leather, an old journal belonging to the previous owner of the manor. Intrigued, they begin to read, uncovering the dark secrets that lie hidden within the pages. As the night progresses, the friends begin to encounter ghostly apparitions wandering the halls of Ravenwood Manor, shadowy figures that vanish as quickly as they appear. The friends try to rationalize what they're seeing, but the sense of unease only grows stronger. They realize they are not alone in the manor, and that something sinister lurks within its walls. Desperate to uncover the truth behind the hauntings, the friends decide to conduct a ritual to communicate with the spirits of Ravenwood Manor. Gathering in the grand hall, they light candles and chant incantations, their voices echoing through the darkness. But as the ritual reaches its climax, they unwittingly unleash forces beyond their control. As the ritual reaches its peak, the spirits of Ravenwood Manor manifest before the friends, a swirling mass of darkness and despair. The friends watch in horror as the spirits lash out, their voices filled with anger and sorrow. With nowhere to run, the friends brace themselves for a final confrontation with the forces that haunt the manor. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends make a desperate bid for escape, racing through the halls of Ravenwood Manor as the spirits close in around them. They reach the front door, their hearts pounding in their chests, and burst out into the night, leaving the darkness of the manor behind them. As the friends emerge from Ravenwood Manor, they are greeted by the light of dawn breaking over the horizon, a beacon of hope in the darkness. Though shaken by their ordeal, they take comfort in the knowledge that they've survived the night and escaped the clutches of the haunted manor. As they walk away, they vow never to return to Ravenwood Manor again. In the heart of Ravenwood Forest lies an old, desolate road, shrouded in mist and mystery. 4 friends, Sam, Emma, Ryan, and Jess, embark on a road trip and find themselves navigating this eerie path. Tall trees loom overhead, casting long shadows that seem to dance in the dim light. As they journey deeper into the forest, they come across the imposing gates of Ravenwood Manor, a dilapidated mansion said to be haunted by restless spirits. The wrought iron gates creak open ominously as they approach, inviting them into the depths of the estate. Inside Ravenwood Manor, the foyer is dimly lit by flickering candles, their flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Dust hangs in the air, catching the faint moonlight that filters through the broken windows. The friends' footsteps echo through the empty halls as they explore the abandoned mansion. As they wander deeper into the mansion, they stumble upon a grand ballroom, its once opulent features now faded and decayed. The room is filled with the echo of music long gone, and the air is heavy with the scent of old perfume. Strange symbols adorn the walls, their meaning lost to time. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The spirits drift through the ballroom, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the ghosts draw closer, their presence filling the room with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from Ravenwood Manor, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the empty halls, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape.
Maya received an old handwritten letter inviting her to Ravenwood Manor, a house she had never heard of. The letter was signed by her late grandmother, whom she had never met. Intrigued and seeking answers about her family's past, she decided to visit the manor. As she arrived, the sky was overcast, and the manor stood tall and imposing against the gloomy backdrop. Maya pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly in protest. The air inside was stale, and the grand entrance hall was shrouded in shadows. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the corners. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Maya found her way to the dining room, where a long table was set as if for a grand feast, though everything was covered in dust. Tall candles stood unlit, and an old chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. In the hallway, Maya stopped in front of a large portrait of a stern-looking woman. The plaque read, "Eliza Ravenwood, 1887. The woman's eyes seemed to follow Maya as she moved. She felt a sudden chill and a sense of being watched. A cold breeze brushed past her, causing her to shiver. Exploring further, Maya discovered a hidden passage behind a bookshelf in the library. She pushed the shelf aside and found a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Taking a deep breath, she descended the stairs, her flashlight flickering. The air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp, with strange symbols painted on the walls. An altar stood in the center, surrounded by melted candles and old, tattered books. As Maya approached the altar, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, and she heard distant, echoing whispers. Maya's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand brush against her arm. Panic set in as she fumbled for her flashlight. When it flickered back on, she saw the ghostly figure of Eliza Ravenwood standing before her, eyes filled with malice. Maya stumbled back, tripping over a loose floorboard and landing hard. The diary she had found earlier slipped from her grasp, landing open on the floor. The pages detailed Eliza Ravenwood's descent into madness and dark rituals meant to bind her spirit to the house. Maya realized that Eliza's spirit was trying to protect a dark secret hidden within the manor. Determined to escape, Maya grabbed the diary and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows darting around her. She burst through the front door into the stormy night, her heart pounding. As she reached her car, she looked back at the manor and saw Eliza's ghostly figure watching her from an upstairs window.
Emily, Jake, and Sarah arrived at Blackwood Manor, an ancient, crumbling estate shrouded in mist. The manor had been abandoned for decades, and stories of its haunting were legendary. They were there to document the paranormal activity for their online show. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, shivering as she stepped out of the car. "That's the point," Jake replied, setting up his camera. "The spookier, the better." Emily led the way up the overgrown path to the front door, her excitement mixed with unease. "Let's get inside and start setting up." Inside the manor, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The grand hall was filled with old furniture, draped in white sheets. As they explored, they found evidence of the past: old portraits, tattered books, and broken artifacts. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up an old locket. "It must have belonged to someone important." Jake filmed everything, capturing the unsettling atmosphere. This is going to be great footage. Emily found an old diary on a dusty table. This might tell us what happened here. Emily read aloud from the diary, which detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family. They had practiced dark rituals, summoning spirits that ultimately led to their downfall. The diary ended abruptly, hinting at a terrible event. "This is so creepy," Sarah said, looking around nervously. "We need to document everything," Jake insisted. "This is gold." As Emily closed the diary, a sudden chill filled the room. The lights flickered, and they heard a distant whisper. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the hall, catching their attention. They followed it to a room at the end of the corridor. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, and they saw a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. It lunged at them, and they ran, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed. "Not yet," Emily said, her fear giving way to determination. "We have to finish what we started." Emily found instructions for a banishment ritual in the diary. They gathered candles, chalk, and other items needed for the ritual. The air was thick with tension as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return at any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked, lighting the candles. "It has to," Emily replied, drawing a circle on the floor. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah stood guard, her eyes darting around the room. "Hurry up. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more furious than before. It howled and thrashed against the invisible barrier created by the circle. Emily chanted the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us," Sarah yelled, clutching a candle. "We're almost there," Emily shouted back, her focus unwavering. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With one final desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the manor, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Blackwood Manor, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Jake said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the manor, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The manor behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Emily said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Jake and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Blackwood Manor. Jonathan, a middle-aged man with a strained relationship with his family, receives a letter informing him of an inheritance from his late uncle. The inheritance includes a remote mansion in the countryside. Curious and financially strained, Jonathan decides to visit the mansion with his wife, Laura, and their teenage daughter, Megan. Laura looks worried. "Are you sure about this? We don't even know much about your uncle." Jonathan nods. "We need a fresh start, and maybe this place can offer that." Megan, always the adventurous one, says excitedly, "It'll be like an adventure." The family arrives at the mansion late in the afternoon. The mansion stands tall and imposing, surrounded by a dense forest. The air is thick with the scent of decay, and the atmosphere is eerily quiet. Megan shivers. "This place feels off." Jonathan, trying to be positive, says, "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Laura clutches Megan's hand. "Stay close, honey." Inside, the mansion is filled with dust and cobwebs. The furniture is covered with white sheets, and the air is musty. As they explore, Megan finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. The mirror's surface is strangely clean compared to the rest of the house. "Look at this mirror," Megan calls out. Laura touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but out of place here." Jonathan frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Jonathan and Laura fall asleep quickly, but Megan struggles. Around midnight, She hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Megan runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Jonathan, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Megan. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the mansion. They discover that it was owned by Jonathan's uncle, who was a reclusive and eccentric man interested in the occult. Laura reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Mansion believed to be haunted. Jonathan sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Megan, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the mansion, Jonathan discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large, locked chest. Laura examines a book. "He was really into dark stuff. This can't be good." Jonathan tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Megan points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Megan is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Laura sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We have to leave now," Laura screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Jonathan grabs an old book from the study. "This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Jonathan reads the incantation aloud, while Laura and Megan hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Jonathan!" Laura yells over the noise. With a final shout, Jonathan completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Laura says, looking back at the mansion. Jonathan nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the mansion behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Megan finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the mansion. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Megan turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, forgotten asylum. It had been abandoned for decades, its history buried under layers of dust and overgrown vines. The locals believed it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. However, a group of 4 friends, Jake, Lisa, Ben, and Sarah, decided to explore it after hearing the eerie tales. "Are we really doing this, when Lisa asked, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Of course," Jake replied, leading the way. "It's just an old building." As they approached the asylum, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence surrounded them. Inside, the asylum was even more ominous. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was covered in debris. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. "This place gives me the creeps," Ben said, his flashlight illuminating the dark corridors. "Just stick together," Jake said, trying to sound brave. "We'll be fine." As they moved deeper into the asylum, they heard faint whispers and distant footsteps, though they were the only ones there. Or so they thought. While exploring a particularly dark hallway, Lisa suddenly screamed. "Did you see that?" She pointed towards a shadowy figure that disappeared around the corner. "What did you see?" Jake asked, rushing to her side. "A person, or something that looked like one," Lisa replied, shaking. "Let's check it out," Ben suggested, though his voice was shaky. They cautiously followed, but the figure was gone. Instead, they found an old, rusted wheelchair with fresh scratch marks on the floor. In one of the rooms, they found old patient records and disturbing photos. The files detailed horrific experiments conducted on the patients. "This is sick," Sarah said, flipping through the documents. "No wonder this place is abandoned." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them. The friends rushed to open it, but it was stuck. The room grew colder, and they heard a low, guttural growl. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, panic setting in. They managed to pry the door open and fled down the corridor. The whispers grew louder, and they could feel a presence following them. Sarah looked back and saw shadowy figures closing in. "Run!" she screamed. They raced through the maze-like hallways, trying to find an exit. The spirits of the asylum's past residents seemed to be everywhere, their wails echoing through the walls. "We're not alone," Ben panted, fear evident in his voice. The group stumbled upon a chapel within the asylum, its stained glass windows cracked but still intact. The room had an eerie calmness, and the spirits seemed to avoid it. "Maybe we can hide here," Lisa suggested, her voice trembling. They barricaded the doors and huddled together, trying to catch their breath. As they sat in the dim light of their flashlights, they noticed a hidden door behind the altar. "Should we check it out?" Jake asked. "We don't have a choice," Ben replied. They opened the hidden door and found a narrow staircase leading down to a secret basement. The air grew colder as they descended. The basement was filled with old medical equipment and cages. "This must be where they conducted their experiments," Sarah whispered. As they explored, they found a large, iron-bound book, filled with incantations and rituals. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy. "We need to destroy this," Jake said. "It might be the source of the curse." With the book in hand, they returned to the chapel. They decided to perform a ritual to break the curse. As they began chanting from the book, the spirits became more aggressive, banging on the doors and windows. "Keep going," Alex shouted. The room shook, and the spirits' wails grew louder. Just as it seemed the spirits would break through, a blinding light filled the chapel, and the spirits screamed one final time before vanishing. "It's over," Emily whispered, dropping the book. The spirits gone, the friends made their way out of the asylum. The building seemed less menacing now, the air lighter. "We made it," Lisa said, relief evident in her voice. As they reached the forest edge, they turned back to see the asylum one last time. It stood silently, as if the horrors within had finally been laid to rest. "We should go," Ben said, "and never speak of this place again." Back in town, life slowly returned to normal. The friends promised each other to never speak of the asylum again. However, the memories of that night lingered. A few weeks later, Sarah received a package. Inside was another iron-bound book, similar to the one they had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Her heart raced as she realized the curse might not be broken after all.
In the heart of a dense forest, where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, stood a remote cabin. Surrounded by towering trees and shrouded in an eerie mist, it seemed to beckon to those brave enough to venture near. Among the dense foliage, the cabin stood silent, its presence ominous and foreboding. A group of friends, consisting of Sarah, David, Lisa, and Mark, arrived at the cabin for a weekend getaway. Excitement mingled with apprehension as they approached the rustic abode. Sarah led the group, her adventurous spirit overshadowing any doubts. David the skeptic couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Inside the cabin, the air was stale, and dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through the windows. The furniture was old and worn, casting ominous shadows in the dimness. Despite its rustic charm, an unsettling feeling settled over the group as they unpacked their belongings. As night fell, strange occurrences began to unfold. Unexplained noises echoed through the cabin, and objects seemed to move of their own accord. Sarah brushed off the incidents, attributing them to the cabin's age, but David's skepticism wavered, and Lisa and Mark grew increasingly anxious. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew heavier, and an oppressive presence seemed to envelop the cabin. Shadows danced on the walls, and a chill settled in the air. David's skepticism turned to fear, and Sarah's bravado faltered as they realized they were not alone. Suddenly, apparitions materialized before them, ghostly figures with hollow eyes and outstretched arms. Sarah screamed, and David's voice trembled as they realized the true nature of the cabin's inhabitants. Lisa and Mark clung to each other, paralyzed with fear as the ghosts closed in. With adrenaline fueling their movements, the friends made a dash for the door, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ghosts pursued them with relentless determination, their ethereal forms gliding